So Brian McFadden and Keith Duffy back as Boyzlife. They've got some exciting new music. They join us now. Gents, welcome.
Well, hello there, Andy. How are you?
I'm all right. You know, it wasn't us starting an interview. It's as though we've already done this once before without me pressing record on something, isn't it?
I was going to say, make sure you press record. Otherwise, it's just the three of us having a chat. Nobody will ever know what we said.
And of course, you guys, you're on the road at the moment. You're touring. You have new music. I think, first of all, let's actually talk about your new song. So you've got The One, which is your new track. And you've got a new album coming out as well. For you guys, this must be like a really exciting, but also, I guess, kind of nerve-wracking time to have new music out.
But it's weird for us because it's our first original album together, full stop. But I think for both of us, it's been, I don't even know how long it's been since we've had original music out. We obviously brought out an album together 18 months ago. We brought out Strings Attached, which was our favourite Boyzone and Westlife songs re-recorded with the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra. And that was obviously a whole different thing. But now this is actually our sound. You know, this is Boyzlife. This isn't Westlife songs. This isn't Boyzone songs. This is songs that Keith and I have written and our music and our sound. So it's almost like going back to the very beginning again to see what are people going to think about your music and your sound.
Keith, was this like a big decision to go with something brand new for you two?
Absolutely. I mean, we brought out an album during the lockdown that we recorded, like I said, with the Royal Philharmonic, an 84-piece orchestra. And that was all the big number one songs that we had with Westlife and Boyzone. And we needed to do that. We needed to kind of show our respect to the bands that gave us our careers first before we could actually get into the studio and try and figure out and find out what the sound of Boyzlife actually is going to be. So we're delighted. We've managed to find that sound. That sound kind of lies between the rock power ballads of the 80s to more of the rock and roll of the late 80s into the 90s, like Brian said. Yeah, said Fred. Bon Jovi, Brian Adams, that kind of thing, you know. I was a huge fan of the 80s, man. You know, the hair standing up in the back of your neck and the slow set of the discos where you get to snog your favorite local girl. But yeah, the One is a perfect example of the sound that we're looking for. We've already chosen song 2 to come out later in a couple of months' time, and we're very, very excited about that as well. But the response to this one, The One, has been fantastic. It really, really has. The support has been phenomenal. You know, from the media and from on social media from the fans. So we couldn't be happier, mate. You know, we're not in our 20s anymore. We're not little spring chickens anymore. So to still be getting that kind of response and appreciation is fantastic, you know, especially for new music.
That was the thing, though, I guess, Brian, is I can imagine when you were first with Westlife back in the day and you were looking at how the charts were working, I imagine the first couple of tracks you were like quite nerve-wracking experience. Will this do what we are hoping it will do? Do you feel like you've gone back to being sort of 18 again, or does the Brian McFadden of 2021 react differently than the 18-year-old Brian?
Well, it's a little bit different because back in the day when we started, when Boyzone and Westlife started, the way a single or a new album would come out was so different. It would go to radio first. You would shoot a video. So the song would be played on radio and the video would be on MTV and all these channels for maybe 6 weeks before the song would ever come out. And so everybody would have heard it. Everyone would have seen it. And then it comes out and then you find out if people like it or not. But the way it works now, we put the song out last Friday and not even one radio station in the country had even been given it yet. No one had heard it. We didn't shoot the video till Saturday. So it works so different now. So the song was available. Then we start talking about it. Then we bring out the video. So it's a lot more of a slow burn process for music these days, where it's not like the old day where you lead up to that big impact one day and you find out if you're going to be number 1 or number 100. You do genuinely now start off and you start off down in the hundreds and you gradually build it up to whatever it's going to peak at. So it takes a little bit of pressure off because people aren't expecting it to be number 1. People are you know, they know that it is a little bit of a slower process, which for us is great. It means we've got time to let people hear it and hopefully fall in love with it for themselves.
Keith, actually, just in the time kind of between Westlife and Boyzone, so Boyzone obviously chronologically coming first, do you, when you talk with Brian and when you like just hear Brian describe how it was working for Westlife, did you have a similar experience, or even in that like 4 or 5 years between the two bands having debut hits, did it change or did it have a familiarity in what Brian says?
No, I mean, I think it was pretty much the same. The 90s was the 90s. We came out in 93. Now, Ireland hadn't really got a pop group per se at that stage. We were very rock renowned for Sinead O'Connor and U2 and Therapy and the Hottest Flowers and, Cranberries and we were very, very rock renowned.
Tin Lizzie. Tin Lizzie.
Tin Lizzie. So Boyzone had a bit of stick. We had to take a lot of stick when we started because people were proud of their trad roots and their rock roots. So coming out as a pop group in the UK, we were a bit of an embarrassment, I think, at the time to the music lovers in Ireland. It wasn't actually until we got our first number one in the UK that Ireland welcomed us back with open arms, going, "Oh, our number one boys come home," But look, that was our experience. We started off playing little nightclubs. We built up to theatre halls and town halls. And, and then by the time we had our first number one in the UK, we went into the arenas and we started playing the bigger gigs, which is when Westlife joined us. They joined us when we hit the big time. So they got the easy run out,
And with like your single now, The One, I mean, I've listened to this. I've actually turned into a bit of a fanboy of you two. In fact, to be fairness, I already was because Keith, I kind of grew up with your music of when I wanted to get into radio. So hearing like the intro of No Matter What for me was like the coolest thing in the whole wide world because I used to pretend being a DJ, kind of jocking up to the vocals, as we'd say. Brian, then when I first got into radio, I am playing your tunes. And so for you two, you're both like kind of massive in my world. So hearing The One, and you're right, as you say about radio, I can remember a time when radio would hear tracks 6 weeks in advance. We would know what these tunes are going to sound like. We could help you to do well in the charts. By now, in 2021, we don't really hear it until it's out in the wild, if you like. So
it's almost like they make DJs buy it themselves now, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, pretty much. But no, it's a case of like, I didn't hear it really till everybody else heard it. And I've looked on your socials, I've looked on Facebook, I've seen everybody saying, I've had this on repeat ever since. And actually, I've been the same. I wrote some notes, which in a way I kind of feel like, this kind of sounds cheesy, because it's kind of got like a familiar feel to it. This is what I was noting down. But I also definitely know it's both you two, and it feels very what I would hope from both of you now. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that was quite important when we were making. And if you listen to when you have to buy the records, like everyone else at the moment, it sounds of it, we'll try and get you an album when it's finished. But when you hear the rest of the record, it has that feel. It is very Keith and I, because without sounding ages. Sorry, Keith. Keith is a little bit older than me, 5 years older than me, and he, you can hear when Keith's writing songs, it's a little bit more of that late 80s. It's a lot more synth based, and you can hear that in his writing. And then my writing, you can hear it is that more early 90s, that Bryan Adams, Bon Jovi. So it's worked really well, especially in the studio. The influences crossing over. And you're only talking about 5 years, but those 5 years, there was a massive change in the late 80s and the early 90s. And we've kind of bonded them together. And I think it's a really, really good mix. And we actually enjoy it because I now enjoy the 80s feel from Keith and he's enjoying the 90s mix from me. So the mix is working really well, I think.
Just to move on to the tour for a sec, because you guys, you are on the road at the moment. I know you're kind of going between gigs, just kind of at the moment as we talk, because you kind of one gig per night kind of thing, and obviously, and how are you finding touring? Not necessarily compared to Westlife and Boyzone days, but actually just compared to 18 months ago before COVID and before everybody's wearing masks and there's hand gel everywhere.
Well, a lot of these gigs that we're doing now have been postponed since our tour started back in February 2020. But when we put the gigs in the diary back then, they were very well placed geography wise. We would do 4 gigs in a row in a certain area of the UK. Then we'd have a couple of travel days, a couple of down days, and then we'd have 4 more in a row in another part of the UK. But because we've been rescheduling the shows, it's trying to get venue availability. So it actually looks like if you put a map of Britain on the wall, it looks like we threw darts at it to pick where we're going to play. We're going from Bournemouth to Glasgow, down to Oxford, back up to Blackburn. I mean, it's crazy.
Like we said to the promoter, we said, "Can you do the tour geographically?" And he said, "I thought you said alphabetically."
So that part of it is tough. We love being where we need to be,
yeah,
and we love being on stage. But getting from A to B and from B to C, is quite exhausting because we're just living on the motorways at the moment, and that is quite tough.
Just with the touring for one sec, right? I know that obviously you guys, you tour in the UK, and you, as you say, it's a case of COVID has made it that you just have to be here, there, and everywhere. I see on your socials you've got a lot of fans outside the UK. Travel, obviously, right? Nobody can predict exactly what the rules are going to be, even like tomorrow. But for the international fans, those who are on there, do you see a point where Boyzlife will be traveling further afield?
Of course, we've got a lot of commitments that we had before COVID hit, and we will see those commitments. But right now, we just can't promise anything. Like, we were supposed to have a whole tour of Australia, Southeast Asia, South Africa, the Middle East, and it was all cancelled and all postponed. But unfortunately, we've got such a huge backlog of UK dates. Like, I think we've got something close to 100 shows to do in the UK before we can even talk about going abroad. And obviously, the restrictions over here are a lot easier than they are in most other places in the world. So, unfortunately, I think for the time being, well, certainly from now till Christmas, we won't be doing shows outside of the UK. But hopefully, January next year, things will change a little bit, and we will be able to go a little further afield. Hopefully, that's the hope.
Final cheeky question. You guys, obviously, you've toured for a very long time. You will have been in your band, you'll have had riders. For those who aren't in the music and kind of touring industry, rider is basically when an artist says, right, to be at your venue, this is what we would like to have in our dressing room. So
yeah, we have.
I was going to say, so what's the difference, right? How over the years have your riders of what you put on for venues, how have they changed? And what is on your rider so that all the venues who are listening to this interview can go, that's what we need to get in?
Well, our rider right now there's 1 bottle of Jameson whiskey, 2 bottles of vodka, 2 packets of corned beef from Sainsbury's, a packet of cheese, a couple of packets of crisps, I think. And then Keith always likes to get some kind of a superfood salad so that if anybody walks in, they think we're really healthy.
Yeah, and then we always have fresh ginger, Manuka honey, lemon, a kettle, and a mug and a cup and a teaspoon.
Yeah. So there you go. For those with a sore throat, those few things at the very end, that is what you need. The Manuka honey, the ginger, and the lemon. I've got it sorted. Lads, it's been an absolute pleasure. It really has been on a personal level for me, and I'm really wishing you luck with the song, with the album. So the song is out now. The album is due out in October?
No, it'll be out next year. We will have a new single out, but maybe... we're not sure yet. It'll be before Christmas or just after, and then the album pretty much straight away after that.
Fab. Well, Brian McFadden, Keith Duffy, it's been an absolute pleasure for me. Hopefully you've enjoyed the chat too. Best of luck with everything. And yeah, hopefully I'll see you again soon.
Yes. Well, Andy Lawson, thank you for your time. And thank you for pressing record.